This video focuses on Assignment 8. Assignment 8 is due April 5th, which is this coming Sunday. And basically, if we look at Assignment 8, you actually are going to be working with files, using files, and we'll do some number processing. Now, numbers we are familiar with. We're familiar with adding numbers. And then we want to, this is basically counting how many numbers there are in this file. The sum of all numbers, that means we're going to add the numbers in the file. And then we're also going to average the numbers in the file. Okay, so we're going to count, we're going to add them together, and then we're going to average. Okay, so a couple of things I want to tell you about this. It might seem a bit difficult because it's different than what we've done before, because now we're actually using a file and reading from it instead of having the user enter the information. Now, if you were to click this file, and you need to do that for this assignment, and you also need to download it. And so that's what it looks like here, but I'll go ahead and download it. And what's very important is that you save that file in the same place that you have your assignment. So if you have your assignment in a folder for C++, you want to put it there. Let's say within that folder, you have another folder for assignment 8. Well, you need to put both the C++ file for assignment 8 and this text file in the same place, or you will get errors and you will not know why it's not working. So what I did is I saved this random.txt file on the desktop, and I also saved an assignment called a8.cpp. So see how they are in the same folder. The a8.cpp and then the random.txt. And it might be important now for you to actually show the extension. See how it has .cpp, this one's .cpp. It might be very important now to show what your extensions are now, because if you don't, you might not be sure what exactly you're reading or not. So the question is, where do you go to show them? So I'm gonna stop recording for just a second, and then I'm going to bring that up. Okay, so to show your extensions .txt, .exe, .cpp, to show them in your Navigator or Internet Explorer, or not Internet Explorer, but File Explorer, you're going to click the New. You might also access it through My Documents or just Documents. But where you go to see what your files are, you're going to click View. And then here, you want to make sure that you have this checked, File Name Extensions. If I click it now, notice the extensions are gone. If I click it again, your extensions are back. That's very important because when we write the program, we are actually going to have a file name and we have to say the extension that it has. Otherwise, it will say that I don't see it. It won't see something just called random. It will say random.txt. And now that we're at this, now that I'm talking about the file name, I also want to make sure that you know that the capitalization matters. So this capital R is here. That means on my desktop, I need to make sure that it's capital here as well. Otherwise, it will not work. Okay, so just make sure, and also keep in mind also that we have been working with programs where you have to focus on whether you have to make sure if it's capital somewhere, it needs to be capital everywhere. So notice how, okay, so here's the program here. And in file is a variable that we're using to represent the file name. So notice how it has a capital F, has a capital F here, has a capital F here. So every time you use that, make sure that it's capital or it's at least consistent. Okay. So let's go back to the instructions. What did the instructions say? So let's just remember that you need to download this file. We're going to go back to the modules to go back to assignment 8. So what does assignment 8 say? Well, yes, we need to do these calculations, but when you're working with files, you need to basically set up your program so that it can read files, and there's some things that you need. So let me go ahead and start off with a notepad, because we need to do pseudocode as well. And yes, we need to do this part, and this part we might already know when it comes to adding and stuff. But the new parts of the file are that you need to open the file and you need to close the file. So those are two very important things to do. Another thing you need to do, and actually this time I'm going to show you the basics of the program. Now, this is not the program, but this is basics just so that you know how to open a file. And here's your open. Here's how you close the file. And this is basically saying that I'm going to use InFile as a variable that will represent the file, InFile open and InFile close. And here we're actually evaluating it using if statements, and I'll show you that a little bit later. But so those are two things. You need to open the file, you need to close the file, and you need to declare the variable for the file. So that's part of it as well. So let's go ahead and declare variable for file. Okay, so those are 3 steps we have so far. Let's go ahead and basically those are the basics when it comes to the file. You just need to declare that variable, open the file, and close the file. Now, what I have here in the background is basically a way to make sure that you can read the file, because I don't want you to think that you're getting an error, but it's because of the code. It might not be because of the code. It could be because of that the file's not there, or maybe the file's in the wrong place. Maybe you have something capital and it shouldn't be. Maybe you don't have the right extension on it. So I want you to try this first to make sure that you do have it in the right place and it's called the right thing. Okay, so basically, what does this code do? Right here, it's saying if the in file does not exist, notice how it has an exclamation point here. If it does not exist, it's going to see out, it's just going to output to the screen that there is a failure. Or you could even say something like, file it does not exist. Oops. File does not exist or is named incorrectly. Okay, so that if it doesn't exist, it'll see out that. Then I actually added, and that's something that you can find in the PowerPoints. I can show you, it'll be in chapter 5. Also notice that our PowerPoint actually had it had the loop information, but then it also has the file information, basically starting at the end on slide 68. But if you go to slide 72, it shows you how to test to see if the file actually exists or not. Okay, but in addition to that, I actually wanted to add, well, to tell you that it actually worked. So if InFile does exist, then it's going to say it worked and you're okay. So remember, how do we know if it should work? Well, the random.txt has to be in the same place as that assignment a.cpp. So if I were to run this program now, it does nothing but open the file, check if it exists, and then close the file. That's all the program does. So when I run it, all it says is it worked. So after doing all of this and it says it works, then great. Now you want to try to do what the assignment says for you to do. I also want to point out that Fstream is necessary because now we're doing input and output. So make sure that that is within your includes up on top. So I actually put on here what is new for you. So it would be more straightforward. So you have your Fstream, which is new. You have your to declare that variable. Then you have where you're opening the file, and then you have when you're closing the file, and that's all the new stuff really. And after that, then you just really need to do whatever the program says. So what does the program say to do in addition to opening and closing this file? Well, you need to write a program that reads the numbers and then calculates how many numbers are in there, the sum of all those numbers, and then the average of those numbers. Okay, well, the question is, okay, so I have a file. Let me actually open up that random.txt. I have a file here that has a bunch of numbers listed, and the program's going to read the first number, and then it's going to add it to a count. Then it's going to read, and then it's also going to add it to a sum. Then it's going to read the next number and then just keep on adding, so basically it's reading over and over and over again, and then it's doing something with those numbers. So basically after it opens the file, you basically want to read what's in the file, and then you want to do something with those numbers. Well, what do you want to do with those numbers? Okay, well, the first thing you want to do with those numbers is you want to count them. Then you want to add them together. So if you look at the assignment down here, then you want to count how many numbers, you want to add all of those numbers, and then average those numbers. So I'll make that a little bit smaller. Okay, so you want to open the file, you want to read what's in the file, do something with the numbers, and basically that something is counting them, adding them, and then averaging them. Okay, so when you count the numbers, what exactly do you need to do? How can you count those numbers? Well, first of all, you need to, I would say you need to think of a space in the memory to hold the numbers so that you can keep on adding them together. So at some point you want to say, okay, we'll start with 42. Well, now let's add, well, actually, if we're counting them, we just want to count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on. Okay, then we want to add them together. So let's go ahead and look at counting them. What do you need to do to count them? Well, there's something called a counter where you get a number, and I'm just going to put X here. X will equal, and actually a counter would be just, it's typically just X equals X plus 1. So you're just counting them. So, and actually, that's another thing too. How do we go ahead and just go through all these numbers? Well, Something that will assist in doing things over and over again is a loop. So we actually want to create a loop to actually do all these things. So we're going to read what's in the file. We're going to count them by doing the counter. And I will actually make this into a comment because that would actually be the counter. Then we want to add them together. Now make that into a comment. Well, how do we add them together? Well, we're going to basically remember the first number and then add the next and the next and the next. And that will be done within the loop. So the question is, what code do we use so that it can remember the first number and then add the next and then add the next and add the next? That I want you to figure out. I don't want to tell you what the code is for everything. And it might not be within here. So you would have to look at other things on how to add stuff. And it's something that, it's stuff that we've already looked at before, but it doesn't have to do with files. So let me know if you're having too many issues with that. Okay, then the next step is to average the numbers. So the question is, how do you average things? Well, when you're getting an average, you need to get a total, and then you need to divide that total by what? How many there are. How many items, let's just say. And that's how you would get the average. So that's pretty much, and I believe we did average before, so that shouldn't be too new. Average is going to be the total divided by how many times. Then, after doing that, then you can go ahead and do your displays. Now, what kind of displays do we want? Well, if we go to back to the assignment, it says your program should then display the number of numbers found in the file, the sum of the numbers, and then the average. So then you want to do display, count, sum, and average. However you want to do that, you can do that with 1 C out, you can do that with 3 C outs. It's completely up to you. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the pseudocode. Let me just see if there's something else I will need to tell you. Okay, so one thing that will help is on slides 78 and 79, you have sample code. And I'm actually going to put those together in one slide here so you can see. So we have, now something that we've been doing like every time is entering information, but we will not need to do that. You do not need to enter anything because once you run the program, it's going to automatically just, well, first, if you have that code that checks to see if it's there, it'll say it doesn't exist or it does exist. That's the very first thing. Then the program will go through this random file here, do its calculations, and then in the black screen when we run it, it's actually going to not only say that, but then it's going to say whatever you put as display. So it's going to say count is this, sum is this, and average is this. So so again, we do not need to put CNs and COuts at the very beginning. We only want to open the file, and then I want you to read. Now, if you look here, this was on slide 79, while input file and it puts it in the number. So while there's something in the input file, this is basically a loop that will continuously run until there is nothing in that input file. It's going to do this. So that is where you would put your count and your sum. Okay, and then once it's done, it continues doing whatever. So then it will do whatever cout you told it to do after this while loop. Okay, and I also want to point out that notice how, okay, we have in the background on the PowerPoint, it has if stream, okay? On this video, the example that I was giving you has if stream in file. The sample here has if stream input file. Remember, this is just a variable that we're using to represent that file. So this one has input file, input file, input file, but we are using, or at least I'm using, in file, in file, in file. You can choose whichever one you want, as long as you be consistent. So within that in file or input file, this is where it reads, and then this is the cout. So let's see if I can go back to the pseudocode. We have this loop here. So the example is saying while, so let's go ahead and do while, and then input file. And then we're going to input. Well, they have number as their variable. And yeah, we could do a number as well. So then we'll do, as far as I know, I believe they're all whole numbers. So we can just use integer. Yeah, looks like they're all whole numbers. So it's integer and the number. So the number is what's going to be read. So while there's stuff in that file, we are going to, oh, well, this is the read. So I'll actually put this on top, because this while is actually where it's reading it. And in that while, we are counting, and then we're adding them together. And I'm going to put this close here, but I would say the question is, do you want to average the numbers inside the loop or outside the loop? So I'm going to say, do you want it here, or do you want this here? Should you average them over and over again, or do you want to wait until you get the totals and then average them? Good question. I want you to figure that out. And that's pretty much all. And I just want to reiterate how important it would be to make sure that you do the basics first. You want to make sure that you have your if stream, you declare it, you open the file, you check if it's there, and then you close it. Once you run it and it says that it's good, then you can do the code that you know. You can do all of your, and you could even comment this out, or you can even remove that and put your loop and everything else inside. So that's pretty much it, and this would be pretty much the pseudocode here. So feel free to change it as much as you want and then submit. Please remember to submit by the end of the day on Wednesday, tomorrow. And thanks so much for watching, and best of luck for you. Take care.